Welcome to the round table. I am Jennifer Eller, and with me today is my co-host Mike Hill. And I never do a shout out for Nick, but Nick Wilson's our producer behind the camera, so I want to give him some credit. But today we're here to talk to Russ and Amy Degitz.
Yay.
So you guys have been, how long have you been at the church? Because you've been here like 10 years.
Oh,
Actually longer.
Longer?
We
Okay.
we gauge it based off Logan's age. We came
Okay.
right after he was born, so it's going on 13 years now.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because we just came 13. Actually, yesterday was our first
Okay.
Sunday. So yeah, you were close to our family too.
So you've been in the lean years,
Yeah.
the trying to figure it out years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
We were upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Upstairs.
Well, and our first introduction actually came when Amy started with a small group from
Okay.
some mutual friends that we had, and we didn't start attending right away then. We had a great kind of home church that she was born and raised in, but that was the introduction. So when we started searching, Amy was like, well, why not? Why not check out life? So it was meant to be.
Who was in your small group?
Janelle Smelser.
Yeah.
It was a mom's group. So all of us that had little ones at the time. So yeah, I can't remember many of the other ones. It's been so long. Christy Laird.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But she and I have been lifelong
Yeah.
friends, and a couple of others. I don't know if they attend here anymore. I don't think so, but those were the two that.
Yeah, because I know in those early days there wasn't a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
Because I had joined one, Jen Gerber had asked me to join one, like Loretta Smith had led it and stuff. And so I was just curious because I'm like, wow, that just wasn't
Yeah,
quite.
so we just
quite
brought our
the thing.
kiddos and
Awesome.
yeah.
What was your first impression of Life Church?
It was very different than what I had experienced as a kid. So growing up, I went to a Pentecostal church.
What? Are
I
you
know.
kidding?
Yeah. Well,
And that's where we were going
yeah,
right before we came here.
yeah. So now there are two churches. There's a Cleveland, and then there's a different church.
Okay.
We were in Cleveland, based out of Cleveland.
Church of God.
Church of God.
Okay.
And so maybe not what you're thinking first.
No, I'm getting this picture of Amy like running up and down the aisle.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Very spirit.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah,
very
that's what I'm like. I'm getting this
Yep.
picture of you
Like,
running
speaking in
around, got
tongues.
flags.
Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't do
Okay.
flags.
I mean,
But
some of
yeah,
that, yeah. Some
some
of the
of them do.
churches had the flags.
So yeah, so when we came here, it was like
Mild.
music was yes,
Like we
very
weren't.
mild.
Like we weren't.
No, we
Oh,
were. And
dang it.
disappointment. It wasn't a disappointment. It was just very different. Music was the same though. We had very
Yeah.
loud, lively music, so that was very similar. But it was very toned down,
Wow.
which is starkly different from what you had grown up
Oh,
with.
for sure.
His was on the other extreme.
Yeah, so this was the sweet spot middle ground for me. Like
Okay.
my first impression or what drew me was just the authenticity. I
Okay.
mean, I've heard that even since we've been here, just the authenticity, the relational aspect. But I was born and raised Church of the Brethren, which, you know, hymnals, stand up, sit down, those types of things. Very regimented. Had a great church family. My grandparents helped start the church, so it was, you know, very foundational for me. But I went from Church of the Brethren to then when we got married, started going to church where she did, where she was born and raised Pentecostal, and then a series of circumstances ended up here. So for me, this was like, wow, this is it. This is, you know, that happy medium in terms of, I guess, what you would call the extremes of just what you would think about a church environment being. So
Because
perfect.
ours were very extreme.
Do you ever have a time in your life where your whole paradigm of somebody just gets completely blown up?
You're gonna look at us all.
Mine right now with Amy is completely shattered. I mean, I would have never ever thought that you would have grown up in a nothing against, I don't mean it that way. I'm just like that would have not.
Because she doesn't do that now.
No,
so it's
I
like,
don't
that would
know
be
why.
interesting
I don't know
to,
why. She seems like a very like you
And I-
know,
did
nice.
Now,
I'm thinking, you know,
oh, and the prayer warriors of my life were women that
I love it. I just again,
prophesied
yeah.
and shouted and laid hands on, and like that's just
So if
what I
during a
know.
message, can I just be like, Amy, can you give me something back there?
Sure.
And I would say
Please don't.
second services creep a little bit
Oh,
towards
second service is
that
way
continuum.
Yeah, first service and second service are different churches.
So I know like some people like think second service, is a little uncomfortable for them, but for us, it's like, wow, this is
Like still toned down. We're still.
we feel super
Oh, I
comfortable.
can't wait till I can't wait to see you
And
out
what
there.
was funny is growing up, like we didn't start going to that church until I was in middle school. So my parents didn't attend for a lot of years. We had neighbors that actually took my sisters and me to church, and it was a Brethren church, so very much similar to what Russ grew up with. But once my parents did know the Lord, they were invited by friends
Yeah.
who attended this church, and it was kind of a battle at that point because I didn't want anything to do with a new family. So I'm sure, a brat in that whole thing. I probably should apologize to my parents for that, but um, so I didn't really understand a lot of that until I was in high school.
Yeah.
And you're scared. I mean, it was like, what in the world is going on? And then you understand that what the Spirit of the Lord is and how, that can be so many things, and it just became normal.
Okay.
I mean, it was just
I got somebody can be looking at.
yeah, so it doesn't
Amy, give me a little help out there.
I mean, like people raise their hands and
Yeah.
like when I say shout, like
That's what I
it's
mean.
more than just a little whoop, it's a lot. And so that's just how it was normal for me to worship and do that and
No, I love
watch
it.
people do that. And
I love the diversity. I love people that don't do it. I love the people that do it.
and
I just love it.
yeah, and it was never expected.
Yeah.
It just
Right.
if the Spirit moved you to do that, it was welcome.
That's
and
what you were
free. You were
doing.
free to do it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's one of the things we've appreciated about Life Church is not getting hung up on the legalism, the technicalities. I mean,
Right.
there are different ways to worship, and people are comfortable on different continuums of that. But at the end of the day, serving God, loving Jesus, those foundational things, like that's where it's at. And so for us, kind of going back and forth on kind of those extremes of like a church environment, for us, it's like, yeah, stay true to where you're at, in those foundational areas, and the rest of it is important, but only to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things about life is that if you have diversity, to me it shows mission, because a lot of times people do get hung up on like, I want to be comfortable, I want to be where it's like I like, but when you're there and one person's shouting and one person is uncomfortable because they're shouting or back and forth, to me that's like, then the reason you're here is because you're on mission, because you will just continue to figure it out, worship in your own way, and then figure out what God wants to do from there. So I don't know. I'm blown away. That's all it's going to be.
Well, I did have to, when he first started coming to church with me, I was nervous because I had been to his
Oh,
and it was just, you knew what to do. And here's my
follow the
schedule.
script.
Yeah.
Follow the script.
And I thought, oh, it's not at all. So I remember like in the car, I'm like, okay. And he knew a lot of the people maybe that went, but maybe hadn't seen them in action.
That's funny.
So I would go through and I'd be like, okay, if you see this, this is what's going on, and this might happen. And so I was giving him like a cheat sheet of like what he might see, but then it became
And
okay.
And that was huge because I had connected to the people. This church was in Wabash, and so that's where Amy was born and raised. And so I'd gotten to know them, and I probably had some preloaded, kind of preconceived notions about like, I don't know about all this, but I'd gotten to know these people and knew genuine,
Great people.
great servants, heart for Jesus. And so when I saw some of,
Them in action.
some of the them in action, kind of the Pentecostal element to the church service, I was like, there's no way this is not of Jesus and of God, because I knew their heart and I knew they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, spirit moving.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jennifer, I got you off track. I just again
Continue.
No. I was just like, I don't have very many moments in life where my whole brain is just like, mind's blown, and it is now. So I just had to get it in. Sorry.
Okay. So we just came off of Christmas. So, do you have any favorite Christmas movies, or have you binge watched any shows since you've been home?
Yeah, so for sure, like Christmas movies, number one is National Lampoon's.
Yes.
It is.
And I know there's some elements to it that probably are a little sensitive, but it just there's so many parts to it that are just flat out hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, Logan kind of drives our movie watching. Like Logan's a
Yeah,
big
the
Christmas
13-year-old
kid.
son.
Is he
Yeah,
really?
our son.
Oh.
He
When he's a Christmas fanatic.
He
So if he
is.
comes out of his room, he'll kill us.
I know.
When he comes out of his room with the robe and slippers and he starts going to the cabinet for a hot chocolate,
Yeah.
you know
know.
he's settled in for
Yeah.
Christmas.
Is. He's
That
he's
is
the one that never wants to take the Christmas tree down. It'll be
okay.
up if he had his say.
Well, in fact,
February,
Yeah.
so he's become good buddies with Bennett.
Oh yeah.
And when he found out that the Wilsons had their Christmas tree up before us, that was
Oh,
bad news. That was bad news for us. So we came home and immediately had to get it out. So,
okay. Does he do the whole like decorating of
Oh
it?
yeah.
Wow.
Really?
mm,
And our tree is almost like it's just a hodgepodge. Like all the ornaments mean something.
Yeah.
Either they were given to us, so it
Right.
doesn't match at all, and it's
it's the
very.
kids
I mean,
stuff.
it is. It's very kid driven, and so he's the kid that when he puts them out, he wants to know the story behind. Well, why do we have this one, and who gave us that? And so by now he knows almost all of them, and Lindsay too.
Okay.
But yeah, he is our Christmas kid.
Okay.
We had our Christmas tree up well before Thanksgiving, and
Well,
thanks to
before
Bennett.
Thanksgiving?
It was
Thanks to
still
Bennett.
November,
Wow.
but yeah, we were trying to hold it, but then yeah, when he saw somebody else, it was over.
Yeah, so we had it up pretty early.
But
So
your question was about, I guess, movies. So National Lampoons. I'm old school, so I like the old Rudolph,
Mm.
like the claymation stuff. And then
That
I
has the abominable snowman.
oh yeah.
Yes.
yeah,
That
Yeah.
one guy elf that wants to be a
the dentist.
dentist.
Yeah, it's super corny, but
Yeah.
Watch this.
I turned it before the kids came over. I mean, I'm not that I was kind of reminiscing about
that's what
my
yeah,
childhood,
that's what it
and the
is.
things that you used to always do. So I was trying to find the thing on the TV that it's not a movie, but it's like a fireplace could be
Mhm.
like on your.
Yep.
Anyway, I couldn't find it. So I went on there and found Rudolph, and I'm like, wait a second, that's the Rudolph. Never really thought that it cost money. So I just rented it, and Sarah gets an email in the other room. You spent $7 on the old Rudolph, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm loving it.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
Uh,
and it blew our kids' minds because we explained, yeah, that was something that growing up we watched every year because you couldn't stream it, you couldn't rent it, you
Yeah.
like whatever came on your 5 channels,
Right.
You knew
that's
when
what you
it came on,
watched.
and
Yeah.
that's
Right.
when you
So
planned to
we
watch
just
it.
watched that every year. So that was a lot of
Yeah, because
reminiscing
wasn't it
about
like Frosty came and then it was
Mhm.
Rudolph? It was like 3 or 4
Yep.
movies in a
back to
row
back.
that
Yep.
mhm.
You
like
knew
you just sit there and settle in and get
Yep.
ready to go back in the day.
Yeah. Yep.
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 Did he decorate the outside? Does he had like
He's not really an outside. He
okay,
decorated his room. He has Christmas tree in his room,
awesome.
and so he has certain ornaments that he puts on those. Like he has a bacon
Yeah.
ornament because he's a big bacon kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything has a meaning. So
Yeah, that's
he's
awesome.
he's not looking forward to taking it down. So I'm not
When
sure.
will you take it down?
I don't know.
We'll probably do it when he's not home.
Yeah.
When he's at a basketball practice or something, we'll
And
just
it's just
sneak.
gone. It just pull the band-aid off.
Yeah, he'll come home disappointed, but at least it won't be the 2 hours or whatever it takes
Because
worth of.
he's of no help when it's time to take it down because
Got
he
it.
doesn't want it.
Yeah.
He's really slow and doesn't
Right.
want to put a lot of effort into taking it down. But
Have you thought of just leaving it up all year?
I
Just
could,
think of what that could save you next year.
you're right.
I
I don't think I would care. It's pretty. I mean, I like looking at it.
It might take all the fun away
couldn't.
though.
Yeah, I
It
couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you have any favorite childhood memories? Anything that sticks out
Well,
to
you go
you
first on that.
growing up?
Thanks.
It
Childhood
could be any
memories.
kind of thing, like
Thing.
vacations.
Oh yeah. Well, vacations. The biggest thing I remember about our family vacations, we always camped. We were a big camping family. And my dad had a really small boat that I learned to water ski on, and we would always take that everywhere we went. And I say camp, like tents, not
Ooh,
glamping. Like
ooh.
we
I'm a
didn't
I'm a
have
glamper.
RV. So, but my grandpa did.
Okay.
And so we would always go together.
Yeah.
So we kind of benefited a little bit.
So you can sit in the tent until you don't like it, then go to grandpa's.
Yes.
Go to the air
And
conditioning.
it was always air
Sure.
conditioned and, they had a refrigerator. I mean, it was just, always obviously more convenient. So we did a lot of camping. Didn't really take big vacations. Probably the biggest one was when we were pretty young. We went to Disney, but that was just our thing, being outdoors and fishing and learning to ski. It took a while, but yeah, tubing and so we
So where'd you go to
vacations.
school in Wabash?
Northfield.
Because the funny thing is that like people that come over from Wabash are always like, I saw Amy Brown. I said,
Yeah, they don't call her by her.
who's Amy Brown? I have no idea who you're talking about. Yeah, no, I saw her in this. I'm like, I don't know who Amy Brown is. And then, but a lot of people, yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of a small town.
It's a very
It's like everybody
yeah.
knows you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, no,
Yeah.
okay, everybody I talk
Yeah.
to. So in that age,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's probably I mean I played sports and so
yeah.
and I coached
Well, you did?
I coached at Wabash.
Okay.
That's where I taught there for a number of years and so
Yeah, so that's so
yeah.
through teaching, coaching, playing, that's how.
Playing. Yep, that's probably but yeah, Brown, that's me.
Yeah, I never put it together. I'm like, I don't know. Then they finally I'm like, that's Amy Degitz. Sorry.
That's okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was at Northfield, so go Norsemen. Are you still coaching there?
Well,
Or did you coach there?
I coached 5th and 6th grade
Oh,
football for Northfield,
okay.
but I was told that I didn't follow enough of their script of how they want their offense ran, even though I said, like, listen, you're running triple in the high school. You ever think about teaching triple option to a 5th and 6th grader? Tell the quarterback to read the end, and like these things don't work, but it's okay. I mean, if you can find somebody else. And I loved it. Did it
Yeah.
with Ethan. Love coaching kids. Love being a part of it. But they told me they were in no need of my services next year, which is okay. I mean, now we're into the whole go get a flat butt for the whole winter because all you do is watch basketball
Yeah,
games.
and sit,
Ethan's in basketball and Face in basketball, and you're like, every night?
Do you have one of those chairs?
Well, that's the thing. Yes, somewhere. Sherry, so like the story of our life is like Sherry would buy something and then we could never find it, and then she'd just buy another one. So I think there's like 5 or 6 of them over at the house somewhere. So I just got to pick them up at some point
Go
when
find
I'm
'em.
over there, which would make so you don't have bleacher butt.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we get that. Like we've been eyeing some people who bring some really nice chairs. We're thinking, why don't we do that?
Do you think though, like this is what I'm thinking. Do I look like I mean, I know I look like an old man, but when you come walking in with a
Yeah.
do
You know,
you
a big
really
step.
look like
It's a
an
big
old man?
step.
Old man. I think I would go comfort.
I don't
think
know,
I
man.
care.
Is it the old people though? Like, do I fit in now?
but I really don't care
Okay.
because we had 9 basketball games in a week.
Oh my God.
By
Yeah,
the-
you're way worse.
By the end of the week, I would have paid to have somebody's. Like,
Yeah.
I would have given them money just to say, can I borrow it?
Yeah, we just try to go clear to the top where you can lean against
Yeah.
the
Right, we
rack
do
or
the same
something.
thing.
Yeah,
But
we
that
try
doesn't
to-
always
That's the next step, I feel like.
yeah.
You're holding out.
You're just
trying to
holding
make it.
out, so-
Yeah, I'm just trying to I watch all these people. Like the other night we're sitting there and we wait in the car because we dropped the kids off early and they have to be there early. So I'm sitting there, this old man comes pulling around and starts backing his truck in, and I don't know he's an old man, but he just keeps backing, smashes the car, just boom, and the car goes whoop, and he pulls forward and gets out and opens up his toolbox and grabs his little seat out of there and walks right in. Like the old man club, like that would be me. I'd be in the old man club. I carry a seat, and next thing you know, I'll be ramming into people's vehicle in the parking lot. And he didn't think twice about it. He just
Didn't
God,
matter.
nope. I don't even think he knew. I think he
Wow.
just
Either that or it wasn't his first rodeo.
No.
ah, he
Wow.
didn't even look of whether or not it was. How did I get off the subject? Sorry. Okay, childhood memories for you.
So I was the oldest of 4 boys. So a lot of them revolve around sports or, backyard sports, or we grew up next to a dairy farm. So going down there to play with those 2 boys that were about the same ages. my brothers and I. But for sure, kind of the capstone of each year was a vacation in northern Minnesota.
Which I still think is crazy that you guys still do.
It's awesome. Yeah, we still do.
Amazing.
So
Yeah.
so I'm 43 and I've only missed 1 year ever. And we
It was my
go,
fault.
not really.
It was.
No. No, we had first got married and Amy had some classes to finish up and stuff, so we didn't go. And it was fine. We're
Yeah.
adults and life happens, but those were, sacred days that growing up you knew you were going to have, all the schedule set aside and it was family time and you're fishing, you're, swimming, you're doing all the stuff that boys like to do. And yeah, we've invested in that. So not only does our immediate family go, but my brothers and their families and my parents still go.
Yeah.
And so it's just, yeah, it's
That's
really cool.
awesome.
And we're outdoors people, so it just fits in every way with what we like to do.
Yeah. So you have like a house up there then?
We
Do you
go to
rent?
the same cluster of cabins
Okay.
basically. So we each family has their own cabin. So it's I would say
Is it
probably
remote like cabins or like?
I mean, northern Minnesota, once you drive out of the Twin Cities a certain distance, they call it the tree line. It's all trees and lakes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's remote in the sense of like we don't have a TV or internet or anything in
Yeah.
our cabins.
Perfect. But no phone signal.
Spotty.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know where to
Spotty.
stand.
Yeah,
If
you know where you know where to find stuff if there's an emergency or whatever. And you can drive into town and
It's
find a couple
very Mayberry.
restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
very Mayberry
Yeah.
town. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
there's a little bit of what you
That's cool.
need: gas station, couple nice restaurant, or when I say nice,
Yeah.
restaurant,
Yeah, it's
restaurants.
perfect.
But Walmart is like 30 minutes, 25 minutes away. I mean, and that's just recent.
Yeah.
They haven't
that's
had a
big
Walmart
news
for
when they got
very
that.
long. So
Yeah. Now the whole town will be ruined.
yeah.
Yeah. But there's 100 lakes in like 8 to 10 square miles
That is
from where
amazing.
Crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
100
it's
lakes.
just, and when I say lakes, like no offense to like Indiana lakes or
Yeah,
people that live
these
on
are
a lake,
real
but
lakes.
like, yeah, these are like real lakes. So like the lake we stay on, you can get access without taking your boat out to 2 other lakes
Yeah.
that are all connected. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I got a couple things that have been on my mind when I knew you guys were coming on. So you guys have been involved in some sort of leadership most of your life, right? Whether it's through teaching or coaching, because I can remember the first time that Brady was going to play baseball at the high school. So we had this conversation about the baseball coach. And it's funny because like Russ was revered and feared at the same time. Because Russ was the guy that first of all, you had to have a certain haircut. This is what I remember about it. Like you had to have a certain haircut, like nothing could be on your ears. And so, this whole, we're bringing rebellious Brady, into Russ's program. So,
So he's the coach that you're talking about.
yeah,
To
no,
figure out. Okay.
I mean, so yeah, Russ was the high school baseball coach
Okay.
at the time. But the other thing they said is from a leadership standpoint, like you're never going to find a better leader than Russ. Forget the whole baseball thing, whatever's going on. And so I'm worried a little bit because it's Brady, like I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to pan out. And so we go and sit in the first meeting that Russ does with all the parents and stuff. And I walked away and I said, my son is in good hands. Clear back in the day, I was like, that is a guy that I think he can work through my son's attitude, because again, that was the thing about Brady. Like he has a strong will. So sometimes he came across very brash, but if you could figure that part of him out, like he's a good kid, they love well, you just got to work through that. So I wonder throughout the years, what have been leadership lessons that you guys have learned and how has leadership changed throughout the years? Because I think it's changed a lot. Like I think from 10, 15 years ago to where we are today, even how we lead, the things that we do and how that approach. So either one of you want to start on maybe some just leadership lessons, things that you've learned over the years through coaching, teaching, uh, administrating, whatever that stuff is. And then maybe has anything changed or are there some things that are just going to be constant all the way through?
Yeah, so I mean, things have changed for sure. And it's been a little, I guess, challenging for me to think about how they've changed a little bit because my journey professionally and in a lot of the areas that I use, leadership capacity has changed. So I've, been a head baseball coach at the high school level. I've been an elementary principal. I've been a high school dean of students. I've been a high school principal. Now I'm an administrator at a university. And so, sometimes, I wonder, or I think it's natural to wonder, is your approach to leadership different because of, the demands of leadership
Mm,
different, or are you just serving a different like population or
mhm.
constituency? Kindergartners in some ways are similar to college students, but they're different. I could probably write a book on that one. Kindergartners did what? Well, the college kids did it too. So
Is there
yeah,
a constant, Russ? Like, is there,
yeah,
because,
there is.
the ebb and flow of who we lead,
Yeah.
and how we lead them individually,
Mm.
can be unique
Yep.
in that. But is there a constant in leadership that for all of us that are learning how to lead, is there that constant that needs to stay in our leadership or
Yep.
at the forefront of our leadership that's transcends age, gender, whatever that stuff is?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some pillars, but probably the one, if you're going to hang your hat on one thing for me, the thing I've learned is it's all about the people that you're leading, serving, walking alongside. If you don't know the people, if you don't invest in the people, get to know them, build the relationships, you might as well forget the rest of it. Um, you know, I, I I do a lot of reading, and a lot of the books I read are kind of leadership development. Anything from military leadership to just business leadership. And one of the books I had read fairly recently talked about a shepherd type leadership and how the sheep know the call
Mm,
of the shepherd. And so I equate that to obviously the natural correlation is if a leader doesn't lead his flock well and doesn't get to know his people relationally, they're not going to know, kind of his call
mm,
or what, buttons to push, levers to pull, those types of things. So, it's not just getting to know people for the sake of leveraging the most you can out of them. It is truly about investing in them, helping them grow. But yeah, I think it all hinges on building the relationship, and really getting to know the people that you're working alongside and that you're leading.
yeah, that's awesome. Has that become harder? Do you think it's harder to relationally invest into people compared to what it used to be?
I think, I mean, for me, this may be counter to some other
Yeah,
people's experiences. I actually think it's been easier.
easier. Yeah.
I think, you know, I was on a college campus when COVID hit
Mm,
and all the things that went with that. And I'm grateful that, we're a faith-based institution. And so we really, I mean, we're small and private. So we stayed open. We had the relationship of things in person, but we still had to change how we did things.
mm,
But one of the things that really came from that because of the changes was I really appreciate and value relationships.
mm,
And not just me. I'm saying that for others
right.
that I work with. I think people realized how easy it is to lose that
Mm,
in the age of technology and how you can probably literally go throughout your day and not interact with somebody face to face and still do your job fairly well.
right.
But in the long term investment, in the long term, uh, I guess, capacity to lead the
Mm,
way that God would
yeah.
have us to lead, um, I think people just desire and crave it almost more because it's so easy to not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Amy, anything different or thing that you would want to add, like in your own journey of leadership?
I would, well, and I haven't had the leadership capacities that Russ has had. I've never been an administrator or anything like that, but
But you're a coach, you're
yes, I
leading.
was a
Yeah.
coach, a teacher, that
Yeah.
sort of thing, which is, different. But kind of going off of what he said, I feel like the most important part about a leader is how that you treat the people around you
Mm,
and fostering a relationship and making sure that as a leader you're trying to know the people around you
mm,
so that they can use their abilities like they're supposed to, and leadership doesn't have to be the loudest person in the front.
Right.
You know, your job as a leader is to figure out the strengths of everyone around you so that can shine through.
Right.
And of course to help in your weak areas and help each other out. But I feel like I've with my age, because I coached when I was very young, you know,
Right.
I was 20 something. And so the girls on my volleyball team weren't that much younger than me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I felt older than them, but
Right.
18 versus 22,
Right.
23 isn't a huge gap. So I felt like when I was younger, I had to lead in a different way, like
For sure.
authoritarian type of leadership where I was the boss.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I grow older, I look back and wonder, did they know that I cared about them?
Mm.
And those types of things are important. And as I've gotten older and been able to, you know, been under leadership that wasn't that kind of style or was, you know, authority based, and you kind of learn from that. And I've learned people got to know you love them.
Right.
You know, they have to know that you care first, and
Right.
then things can fall into place. Because if they don't know that, then
Yeah.
you're really not able to make a difference, and you're not able to reach them, and they're not able to maybe do what they're called to do either.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's probably been the biggest thing that I've learned, and it has become easier now that I have that mentality.
Right.
Now, it's easy to love everybody and, you know, invest in everybody the same.
Right.
You know, sometimes you got to work at it a little harder in certain situations, but like that's to me what I wish I would have known as a younger
Right.
coach or a younger leader.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I know that now, but I wish I would have known that then.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me in leadership has been just the evolution of a leader, you know, because you don't know. Like I was never taught at like what to do. So it was always you read about it or you watch somebody who's getting results and you're like, "Oh, that's what they do." So I'm going to try it, and you try that. So if it's authoritarian because you watch somebody that was highly successful because they ran a tight ship, and if you run a tight ship, then you have to be successful. And then you're like, well, but this leader's successful because it's all relationships. Like the Google, like, it's just like hang out, relationships, try to figure out what that looks like. And I think the evolution for me has been it's a combination of both. It's this idea that you have to be highly relational, but relational without authority tends to create an environment of chaos. Authoritarian without relationships, like a prison, and so what's the combination of both, right? And how do we know the right time to bring in the right style of leadership? Because I just think it's different,
Yep.
in situations of where and how we do it. And I think that's the thing I continue to try to learn, is when is the right time? What does authoritarian look like? Because it's different. Like some people can take it differently, back to how people. Some people can be like, you could sit across from them and be like, nope, you suck. And they're like, I know, let's get better.
Yep.
And
Right.
some people be like, you just
They
told
cry.
me I suck. You can't. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
back to what
Yep.
you were saying is how do you get to know people and how do we learn from that and then adapt it to each individual person in the way that we lead? Like I think that's a challenge,
Absolutely.
in leadership. The other thing is so in the course of you guys have been married how long?
Just over 20 years.
Just celebrated
About
20
20 and
this
a half years.
Yeah, so
past summer.
in the midst of that, so obviously you guys have led people, kids, whether through coaching, in both realms or being in a school system, watching all of those things happen. So in the kid environment, today, so having your own, being around kids, today's challenges in raising kids, is it different than it was? And what are some of those
Absolutely.
difference? What can young parents learn, some of the challenges in raising kids that they could glean from
Yeah.
from people who have watched it, because you're watching it happen. You're also in the middle of it, trying to be able to get it done. And you've watched it from a whole other level, right?
Yep.
Like you're all the way from young kids to, university students in the midst of that. So any thoughts on the challenge of raising kids, or the thoughts or wisdom that you could give?
Yeah, I mean, both of us have been in education of some level for over 21 years now. And yeah, probably the thing that is the hardest is how much kind of kids have changed over time. I mean, it's just
Oh, wow.
challenging.
So kids in general just have
I
changed.
think so. And
Mm.
and to be fair, I try to really kind of back people off when they just really start to bash this
Mhm.
generation or a generation. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, how do you think this generation got that way? Like,
It's
Amy and I,
interesting.
yeah, our generation hasn't been the greatest stewards of how to raise this next generation.
Mm.
And I don't mean that in a condescending way or to cast stones. Just the reality is we have, as a generation, broken down structures like the family structure
Mm.
or expectations or priorities that have really created challenges for our kids and the kids we teach. I think probably the two biggest challenges that I see, one is the family structure.
Mm.
There are absolutely ways that young people can flourish if they're not in a traditional family. It's not an indictment of people that are not in a traditional family structure, but the reality is I think it takes a lot more intentionality if there's not the traditional family structure to make sure there's still the right mentors, the right peer groups, the right experiences wrapped around those kids, because the reality is there are potentially gaps if
Mm.
that's not there.
Mm.
I think the other thing is just a really quirky uh, set of priorities.
Hmm.
I mean, and we see that, and we, as much as we tried to be strong against it, it's almost like a force that sucks you in. It's like, the sports parents that just go crazy, and it's like, wait a minute. And I've said this, so we both coached at the high school level. I've seen kids go on and play college, and I had one of my players play professionally, and all. For almost everybody, the ride ends at the end of high school. So our daughter's a sophomore, our son's in eighth grade, and we unfortunately have just seen this priority structure that gets way out of whack.
Mm.
And we've really tried to invest in our kids and say, look, we want you to learn the life lessons from sports.
Mm.
We want you to invest in it and understand how to tough through. And if you're sitting the bench, hey, get better,
Right.
those types of things.
Yeah. So can I
Uh,
ask you this? Because now this is getting me
sorry.
thinking now, because so Sarah is like, she tells her kids, I'm not a taxi. I'm like, you're playing
Mm,
one sport. Like you're
mm,
playing one sport. And, again, because Sarah's family, they're all giants,
yeah.
so the idea is they want them to play basketball, like all of them. So in Ethan's parent meeting, the coaching staff, and again, I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong, but they're like, if you want to play basketball, you have to play all year round. So
Mhm.
get ready. So you guys that are here, if you want to continue to play as sixth graders going up, you need to play. Basketball doesn't stop after this season. You need to continue to play. And in my mind, like, I get it. I know what he's saying, but how do you guys manage that? How do you, because you guys both have very athletic kids who are highly involved. I mean, they play athletics, right?
They play
We
sports.
play sports.
Depends on your definition of athletic. Like, no,
They're
yeah,
highly
no, you're
involved.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
again, yeah,
We're
they,
just
For sure.
we're well aware that the ride will end when they're, and that's okay.
yeah,
We are
no,
totally
right.
fine with
So
that.
how do
Like,
you balance
Yeah.
trying to figure all of that out? Because again, I'm somewhere in the middle. So when she asked me my opinion, I'm like, we had to do some of it because we had 8 of them.
Yeah.
So when the Clark kids came in, it just was like, you don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
Like we can only do unless you guys are going to taxi each other,
Right.
but we were kind of under the, not even necessarily are going to play college, keep you busy, be a part of,
Right.
Yeah. And
be a part of
that's
a team, learn some of the aspects
right.
of it all. And yeah, so I'm just curious your thoughts of how do you balance family priorities and life with kids that are highly involved? Because I think that's a good wisdom. I think there are a lot of parents trying to figure it out
And
today.
I think COVID kind of gave us a perspective of that
Mm.
because when everything stopped and we didn't have anything, it kind of opened our eyes a little bit to how our schedule really did dominate.
Mm.
It was dominated by sports. Like
Yeah.
that's what we did.
Right.
So it kind of gave us a moment to pause and kind of think about if we are the crazy people that I
Yeah.
mean, truly
We're
that we
trying not to
didn't
be.
want to be, you know.
Right.
Um, but you know, our kids, Lindsay only plays basketball, but it's kind of the same concept. If you are not in another sport, it does. I mean,
Like you're supposed to play.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, she has a year round. I mean, July does
Yeah.
she doesn't do anything in July, but there's conditioning and all of the things.
Yeah.
And Logan plays two sports, but and Lindsay and I were just talking about this right before we came in about how it's changed because you know, Russ went to a much bigger high school than I did, but at a small school, if you were athletic, you did everything.
Yeah.
Like you played all the sports. And
Right.
so I never experienced a year-round activity. I mean, we played volleyball in the fall, basketball in the winter, ran track or played softball in the spring, and those worlds never collided.
Right.
And so I was year-round, but not the same thing year-round.
Right.
So I think one of the things that we've really tried to as parents is help our kids understand that this is not who you are.
Mm.
Like this basketball that you play is an activity. It's something that you use as a ministry. Like God has given you the ability to play. You may not be the star, which is fine. But that's kind of like your mission field.
Wow.
You know, when you go and you're with those same kids, I mean, think about how much time your kid spends with those kids. Um, it becomes like your little mission field,
Yeah.
and you're not traveling out of the country, but you're with the same group of kids to give you the ability to get to know them, to know are they a person of faith? Are they searching for something? Is there something that you can help with, or do they need a friend? Do they need, you know, it's your opportunity. And it's so much more than being on the basketball team. It's so much more than scoring the most points or having the most steals or the assists or rebounds or whatever. It's how are you connecting to those people that you're spending the most time with? Because that's how God's going to use you.
Yeah.
And so now more than ever that our kids are really having the schedule that you're talking about is your opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of the avenue that we've tried to push them, and not so much performance based,
Sure.
but how are you making an influence on those people that you're spending so much time with?
Yeah. And so the wisdom for everybody that's listening is that because I just don't think you can reverse this. Like this whole the new culture of athletics, you're not going to reverse it. Like these things aren't going away as much as people want to like, hey, you know, we're not doing it. Listen, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're either going to figure out how to participate in an effective way, or you're just not going to participate
Right.
at all.
It's all or
Like
nothing.
you're going to have to
Yeah.
figure that part out. So the wisdom would be is just helping kids navigate the purpose of what they're doing. Right. And then conceptually, if if we can help them navigate this, it's really no different than taking them to a church activity. Right. Like you're taking them to a ministry opportunity, and if used that way, could be as effective as showing up for youth group.
Yep.
You know, and so the concept of, okay, it gives us a chance, one as parents to be in the stands, you know, gives us a chance to interact with other people that don't know the Lord, and it gives kids an opportunity to interact, build relationships with. Yeah, so I think that would be a good perspective, that things that we could learn of, okay, you're not going to switch it. So how do you just put Jesus in the middle?
Yeah.
How do we make that a mission field and an opportunity, and do the best we can? Because again, that was my big thing. Once the ride was over, because that was, whether it was coaching, whether it was going to games, like it was always my opportunity to, hey, I'm going to get to know somebody. I'm going to do the best I can to share Christ. And then when the end of the road came, I'm like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? Like, you just go home every night, or,
Yes,
like
you go home every
that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have any, like the concept of how do you then reassert yourself in other areas, right? To try to figure out, what that looks like.
And it's been interesting having that conversation with our kids. I mean, Lindsay she kind of gets it. I mean, I think she's just a little more attuned to that
Yeah.
opportunity. Um, where, she's been involved in FCA, has given a devotion, and is not afraid to be up in front of people
Yeah.
and talk to people. And she gets that very clearly here. And she's just very confident in that. Speech is her favorite class. And so, not that she feels that she has to be a center of attention, but she's comfortable, talking to people, and has had those experiences. Whereas Logan, I think that was almost like a light bulb that went off when we started having that conversation with him about how, you know, basketball is just a sport, but you have a purpose,
Yeah.
and he's starting to really kind of think about that. Now
Yeah.
he's more passive. He's not going to ever be the kid that speaks up and raises his hand and,
Sure.
interjects or anything like that. But he's modeling,
Yeah.
and he's an example, and he's taking that a lot more seriously
Right.
since we've kind of tried to, present it in that perspective.
Well, and it
So
goes back to what you said from the beginning. Like, if everything's about relationships,
yeah.
and if you take relationships and you make them on purpose, right, you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is if you're going to build that relationship and you're going to build it on purpose, God will give you the chance. Like, the opening will come whenever it's supposed to. The chance will come. Like, you don't have to be the get up and lead the prayer. Like, you don't
Right.
have to get up and be the leader. You have to be there on purpose, waiting for an opportunity. And I think that's the chance we can get.
And this is one illustration, and talk about whether it's athletics or whatever, there's a conduit to introduce people to Jesus. And so, we think about the peer groups of our kids. So I coached Logan's peer group for basketball, baseball for
Since third
5
grade.
years,
Yeah.
Oh,
probably.
wow.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this, I mean, some kids play only one or the other, but for the most part, I would say a cluster of about 10 to 12 kids that are all pretty common. And so when Logan got baptized here, that was a way to have an easy kind of quote unquote conversation
Yeah.
about it, even though conversations have been taking place, it got a little more serious. And I remember one of his teammates said, "Hey Logan, I'm thinking about getting baptized." And then he said, "And I would want your dad in the tank with me." And I was
Yeah.
like, "I don't care what else happens. Like
Yeah.
5 years worth of coaching,
That's
if
good
that's
stuff.
it,
Yeah.
don't care about anything
Yeah.
else." And so, sports can be a way to get distracted easily, but it's also a really unique way to be plugged in and find
Yeah.
those opportunities.
Right. And I think that's the thing that we have to. I don't know hardly anybody, whether it's sports, whether it's farming, whether it's mechanics, you can immerse yourself in anything to keep yourself busy without purpose, right? Like,
Absolutely.
any of those things can keep us away from what God wants us to do. You can
Yeah.
immerse yourself in work. Like, you could just say, well, I'm gonna have a kid that's never gonna play sports, but then they're working every night. Like, I mean, it can be anything. So I think it's a great lesson that you guys would say or to teach. Just take whatever it is and make it purposeful and use the opportunities that we have, and whatever those are, to get a chance. And if one can be saved, if one get a chance, or if it's somebody sitting on this podcast 20 years from now and be like, part of my story is my baseball coach, when I was a seventh grader. That's like, you just don't know those things. You don't know what's going to happen. We just need to be obedient, in that moment. So here's the other piece that I'm like curious about. So I'm gonna paint a picture. I don't know if it's the true picture or not, but I would say if people were following you guys or watching from a distance, that um like where you're going in life is working pretty well, right? Like, you're making good career moves, your kids aren't in jail, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, you're a pretty normal, like, things are going well in life, right? And we always have little hiccups, of different little things of being parents or in marriage and all of those things. But in the past year, I mean, you guys got a big hiccup, that really didn't have anything to do with you, but it caused a hiccup in your family. And so what I want to like just dive into is that I know for me is you're walking along in life and then those all of the sudden moments that just rock your world. Um, like what it does in the midst of, we were talking before we came on, when you walk in the fire, you don't come out the same, and the moments, in that, and we don't have to get into what those things are, but I just like to hear from you guys. What was it like in your marriage? What was it like, in your family? What was it like in life in general? Where, I mean, it was life altering
Yeah.
things that,
Yeah.
and how did you get through it? What did you learn from it? And what can we take away that we could learn from you guys? Because regardless, we're all going to face hiccups. We're all going to face bumps, some bigger than others, but I think it's how we handle those things in our marriage and how we handle those things in our own personal life and how we move through that or how we navigate that is important. So I don't know if that was a great way to paint the
No,
picture,
No,
but
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So we did our world did get rocked. And the last year was super challenging. And one of my favorite sayings is everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Yep.
And we got punched in the mouth. And we thought we had this plan. We thought that, we were doing, you know, following God's design. And at the end of the day, we were, but there were for sure some things that needed to be sifted.
Mm,
You talked about how nobody comes out of the fire the same. I we did talk before we started here. I wouldn't have chosen this route
mm,
to have that happen, but I'll tell you, when we came out of the fire, the impurities were use
mhm,
this analogy, the impurities were burned off. The fire helped refine
mm,
and harden the things that should have been refined and hardened for
mm,
us, and softened the things that should have been softened. I think about, the circumstances. So it was really a professional area for me that bled into, our personal lives, and could have absolutely, beyond just kind of staggering us, could have crumbled our marriage,
mhm,
could have crumbled, our family structure, and it just didn't. And we had this conversation very intentionally yesterday. Um, you know, this is something that actually, steeled us in a stronger sense. I mean, our
mm,
marriage is stronger now than it ever has been.
mm,
Our family structure and priorities, I think, are much healthier than
mm.
they've ever been. And, that's not to say that we've figured everything out now.
Oh,
But what happened was, through this challenge, through, this trial, we really leaned into God and
mm,
said, okay, so what do you have for us through
mm,
this? And we were given very specific um, prayers that we should pray. And it's been amazing to see how those things have happened. Um, there'll be a whole, opportunity for me to share, I think, in amazing ways, a testimony with others that maybe face trials and challenges about, our timing versus God's timing.
mm,
Um, I'm jumping all over a little bit here, but one of the most remarkable aspects of this, I am a planner, I'm OCD, I'm structured, I fill in the blank. And I know I had heard how all of this would play out and mapped out, and I had this sense of, okay, this is how the plan's going to work. And when it didn't fit in that way, when
mm,
the pieces didn't match to what we were told and kind of what the idea was, how things would be mapped out, I remember still being frustrated in the midst of that. And it worked out so much better
mm,
in the end because God's hand was in it all the way along the journey. And so, I guess from that standpoint, yeah, we were rocked. We wouldn't have asked for it. Still wouldn't have wanted to
right.
go through it. But now on the other side of it, seeing how God used us and how he was in the situation, it for sure strengthened our marriage, strengthened my faith, and gave us, I think, a platform to be models and examples to our kids, even though they don't even know all the
Mm,
details
right.
of how to lean into God when things get tough, when things get challenging.
Yeah, so Amy, so what was it like? Because I think this is important, like it's for um and whether it's the shoe can be flipped either way, but what was it like and how did you walk through seeing your husband struggle? because I mean, I say struggle. I mean,
Yeah,
there is a real sense that I know what it's like on the other side when I was watching Cherry, like this helplessness of like, I mean, I don't even know how to describe how, and yeah, it doesn't matter. But being on the other side of it, of knowing where he's at, like, so can you help, some of our listeners understand what was it like for you, because you're brought into it, and you're watching your husband, I'm going to say suffer. I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if that's
it
a
was.
Struggle
accurate
and suffer
Absolutely.
terminology.
are
And
fair. Yeah.
so how did that, how for you were you a part of that journey and support, and how did you stay strong, in your own faith and working through that?
Well, I have to be honest, at the beginning, I don't know that I was very good. I don't know, lack of a better way, but because it was so shocking and so just devastating, um that I didn't really know what to do,
Mm,
honestly,
yeah.
because I feel like this really taught me a lot about control
Mm.
and how, I mean, I'm not like him as far as
You're not that OCD.
Which is good for her.
which is fine. I'm not sad about that, but you realize just how you had zero control
Mm,
over things like this, and that takes a lot out of you
mm,
when you know that there's nothing you can say, nothing you can do, there's no words. I mean, it just left you helpless.
mm,
And so God taught me a lot about control and how I just have to give that up
mm.
and trust.
Yeah.
Because, we can look back now and just see God through the whole thing.
Mm.
And at the time, I couldn't or I didn't want to
Yeah.
because I was so distracted by so many other things. And I think that was really my pitfall at the beginning, was I was so distracted by all the negative and all the ugly and everything that had happened, and that was where my focus lied,
Right.
when my focus needed to be on what God had and his promise, and how, you know, throughout our whole marriage, like, Russ has always, had God's hand on him and so many things that we could go through, but there's not enough time for all that. But so I didn't have my focus where I needed it to be.
Mm.
And once I did, that's where I found my strength
Yeah.
to get through that, and to, we always promised that we to each other that we would try never to have hard days on the same day,
Mm.
so that one of us would always
Yeah.
be okay,
Yeah.
and for the most part, we did a really good job of that. Um, but I feel like once I had my focus in the right spot,
Yeah.
then things changed for me.
Right.
And not that I could change anything, but
Right.
my mind was clearer, and my faith was stronger, and my words were I could find encouraging words, and I wasn't letting all the heavy
Yeah.
really set in.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense,
It does.
but it took a while.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was something I had to learn,
Yeah.
and I didn't have that. I mean, I feel like when it's not you, you can tell someone that they need to do this and they
Mm.
need to be focused, but when you're going through it, none of that
No.
sinks in until you can kind of grasp it for yourself. And there
Right.
were just times where I mean, I just cried, and I just didn't know what to do, and I just felt like I was in a um just such a state of confusion, and I
Right.
think that's where Satan wanted me to be,
Right.
because as long as I was confused and I was in this terrible state, I was of no help to him,
Right.
and I was no help to my family, and I was no help to my kids.
Right.
um but once I figured out where my focus was and I kept it there,
Mm.
not that it was easy, um not that it wasn't a daily fight and a daily struggle.
Right.
But that's what we're told it's going to be, one day at a time. And that's what we did. We took one day at a time. Um, and now I can look back and just see just how
Yeah.
it all was woven together. And, we just talked about this last night, just now that a huge part is over and it's behind us, that we're just looking to see what good is going to come.
Yeah, for sure.
And how that part is still not over. Like there's going to be good, and I could go on and on about how good things have happened. Like we've seen the worst and the ugly of things and people and that sort of thing, but we've also seen some really good things.
Right.
And that's what we hold on to, and those are the things that while we were going through that, God was weaving in,
Yeah.
and we didn't expect. And
Right.
so, like one of the verses that we hung to was, he's going to work things out for the good. And while that didn't make any sense when we were in a storm, it makes sense. It's starting to make sense. So sometimes it takes
Yeah.
going through it all to be able to see it all,
Right.
If I can add one thing really quickly, so we did learn that control is something you have to give over,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you don't have a choice.
Right.
And I think when you face that situation, when you're rocked or when you get punched in the mouth or whatever term you want to use, you do have a choice. Like we face that crossroads of we're going to lean into God, or you know what, God, if this is it, then I don't want any part of it.
Right.
And I remember like I felt like I was solid in my faith. And I know I was because we lean into him and that really sustained us. But everybody has that choice at some point.
Right.
I mean, you make it every day, but really when you're faced with that massive trial or whatever hits you, you're going to make that choice. And I'm obviously grateful that we made the choice to lean in, but you may not control things except that choice, which is I'm going to follow God and trust him, or the alternative, which you have that choice, but obviously not the one that we would recommend based on our experience.
Right. And I think based upon, I mean, people that know you would know that it's a multitude of decisions to lean in the small times of life
For sure.
that prepare you for the fire,
Mhm.
because you don't usually get to those places in life and lean in. Because I think the confusing thing about leaning in, because I'm assuming they're, unless you guys, are way different than most, of there's like, really, God? Like there's these moments of like,
absolutely.
because I think people would be like, well, you're not leaning into God. No, I am.
Yeah.
I'm leaning really close to his ear. Right. And I'm gonna like, God, like, really?
Yeah.
Like these things really, like that's still leaning in. Like he's not afraid of the conversation. He's not afraid of, he would rather know that what you've built over time, that this is the time he'd want to hear from you the most. Right. To lean into those aspects of it all, because I think that's why we tell people now, try to lean in the small times today, because all of us at some point are going to face those things. And you're right, Russ. And unfortunately, I've seen too many people that, yeah, that's those situations in life come and they're like, I'm out.
Because
Like,
it's easier.
yeah, like
It's
I'm out.
easier just to throw your hands up and say, I don't want anything to do with this.
Right.
And it's harder to fight the battle every day.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Because not only is it the external battle, it's this internal battle, right? Like the idea of like, we got a battle to fight, the situation that's going on, but then you got this internal battle being like, why? Like, why is this happening? What have we done wrong? And where did this come from? And how could this be happening? And because you can just erase all of that and walk away from all of that and not try to say, okay, because I know these were some of my hard conversations for myself. Like, God, I get it. Like, what are you trying to teach me? Like, what? Well, I know I'm not changing these things. So what do I need to learn? Where is it that, and this is hard to like let happen, but where are those impurities? Like, what are the things that I didn't see?
Yeah.
Because that's easy to do. What are those things that I guess you need to burn them off? I'm like,
Well, and we had everything that you just said those were conversations that we had over and over and over again. And it was, we just wanted so badly to know
Yeah.
the answers to all of
Right.
those. And it was, no, not yet, not yet. And it was a patience and a trust and all of these things that honestly we weren't good at.
Mm.
We weren't good at giving over control. We weren't good at being patient. It was a lot. There were a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
There were a lot of lessons. And um I can say that I'm certainly not the same person that I was
Yeah.
when all this started. And I'm thankful for that, and for a lot of reasons. Um, but I've also I'm starting to understand how and why, God puts us through tests like this.
Yeah.
It's because of the choice you have.
Right.
Are you going to let him do what he needs to do to make you what you need to be?
Right.
And I wasn't who I needed to be, and I'm working on it.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't think you ever arrive.
Nope.
Um, but it was a lot of lessons that I needed to learn, and it's continuing.
I know one of the things that God always like would remind me of is there's times to be molded, and I think of that like, so you're soft clay and he's just kind of, and there's time to get the chisel out.
Yeah.
And those chiseling times hurt, I mean, it's just like, really, I didn't notice. And then it's like, but I think those fire times in your life, some of the molding hurts. You realize some things about ourselves that you were like, didn't know it, thank you. But it's way different than let me just mold you a little bit through this situation and this little challenge. And I mean, and I think that's the thing that will be, I mean, I know from this journey, in praying for you guys, and because that's the first thing I said. I'm like, really? Them? Like, why? Why? Like, out of all of the things that could happen, like, why at this stage, what's going on, all the sacrifices that you make, and then this happens. But then as I prayed with you guys, through this situation, that it was obvious that when you come out at the other end, not only will you be different, not only will you have a testimony, but I think God has a plan, for the future that he needed you ready for. And
That's one thing that we finally got to that.
yeah,
It took us a while to get to that.
oh,
A long time to
right.
get to that, or at least it did for me, to know
Too. Yeah.
that in all of this, there, like you said, we wouldn't have chosen this method,
Right.
or this journey specifically, but we weren't the people that God needed us to be then to do what he has in store for us
Right.
whenever.
Right.
And that's once that clicked, not that that made things easier,
Right.
but it gave me a drive, and it helped me understand more purposely
Right.
my position and my um in the whole thing. Just helped me understand the purpose of what I was supposed to do. And not that that's clear either
Right.
right
Right.
now, like, but it that got me through. But along the way, like, I feel like there were times where God knew that the absolutely breaking point, I felt like I got to that a lot, or several times.
Yeah.
And before it would happen, he would give me what my heart needed, or what my mind needed, or what
Right.
my anxious thoughts needed to get me through.
Right.
And I started looking for those things, when I started recognizing, I don't know how much more I can take of this. I just don't know. And then he'd give me a little bit more, and it was always enough to get me through. So there are just all kinds of stories that
Yeah.
we could share. That
Yeah. And I think the one thing that's important, and you said this, is that it's not like you did anything wrong. It's like a lot of times people think, well, God needs to work on me because I'm bad.
Yeah.
No, God needs to work on us because we need to be the best version that God wants us to be. It's not that we're bad. It's not that he's mad. It's not that he's upset. It's just there's a new version of us that he
Mhm.
needs.
Yeah.
And it's that work that it's okay. Like, it's okay. We didn't do anything wrong.
Mhm.
You know, we didn't,
Mhm.
we're not getting punished when you're getting molded or the
Right.
chisel comes out. It's like, there's a version of you I need.
Mhm.
And so this gives me an opportunity to work, you
Mhm.
know, it gives me an opportunity to move forward. So we're ending up. Can you believe it's been an hour already? So if
Yes, I
one,
can.
one of the things that maybe we can end
Mhm.
with, is there anything that for married couples out there, anything that either through this time or through your time being married, that you would give advice to married couples to continue to have a strong marriage, healthy marriage, and to thrive in your love for one another? Anything specific that you guys do that you would recommend to other couples of like, hey, if you want to have a good marriage, if you want to be able to make it through tough times, like here's something that should be foundational for you?
I would probably say through all of this, well, even before, like once we started having kids and you'd go back to schedules and all of that, um, we've been very intentional about carving out time
Mm.
just to be together where, our kids aren't yelling in the background or needing something or taxied someplace, just time where we can sit down and not catch up on schedule, just time to talk to each other, talk about what's going on, um, and our thoughts or hopes and dreams, and I mean wildest dreams and someday want to accomplish or bucket list or just those things that keep you connected, because distractions are on purpose.
Yeah.
Like when we get distracted, it's on purpose that the
Yeah.
enemy has to a plan. I mean, he hates seeing strong families. He hates seeing couples that are still connected, and he uses distractions to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't see it and you don't recognize that that's what's happening, but those distractions create wedges and distance, and then that causes issues or problems down the road. And so that's one thing that we've really started in the past several years, um, trying to do. And sometimes it's in between our kids' practices, or there were several times where we would bring the kids to youth group and sit and have just
Yeah.
a drink here for an hour at the cafe. I mean,
Right.
anything that allowed us to just stay connected in conversation is something that we've
Yeah.
felt has really helped us.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I would just add, besides just the time, which is super important, we try to be more intentional about finding common experiences. So like we've both served here at the church for a long time, but
Mhm.
we've started serving more together
Mhm.
the last year. So
Hmm.
little stuff. We serve
Mhm.
donuts together. We teach up in 252 Life Kids together. Those types of things are important. So it's just gives us a way to invest together,
Yeah.
and kind of envision how we can, support ministries as a couple instead of, us doing our own ministries, which are important, but we do it together now. I think being honest with each other has been important. Like she said, we can't have a bad day than the same day.
Yeah.
So we had to be honest and upfront. And I would say too, this was hard for me on the front end, and it's still challenging, I think, for anybody, but being more in tune with the needs of your spouse or your partner than yourself. I would find myself sometimes with the pity party and feeling like, oh, why is this for me, for me, for me?
Right.
And then didn't recognize early on that the impact was, she was having, and even a little bit the kids. And so once I flipped that script a little bit and started to focus on how can I care for my wife better, that was transformational for me in the process. So as a couple, whether you're facing a trial or not, I think being in tune with what your wife needs or your husband needs is really important for a healthy marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay, Jennifer, you want to send us out?
So if you're not a part of our podcast group, you can text the word podcast to 260-408-8383, and we'll pose questions to you, to get your thoughts. If you want to be on the podcast, or if you have somebody that you should be on our podcast, let us know.
Yeah, and don't forget. So this will go out on, what is even
Tomorrow,
today?
hopefully.
It's
Today,
today.
Wednesday.
Yeah, this
Wednesday.
week's all messed up. So this will go out, tomorrow on Thursday. If you see it on our social media, like, share, comment. We'd love to be able to get that out there to other people. If you're listening and you don't know Russ and Amy, go onto our YouTube, watch it. At least if you don't want to watch it all the way through, that way you know who they are. So you can come up and say hi on a Sunday morning. You guys are back and forth, first and second service, right?
Kind of
Or-
depends on when we serve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So you might see them in either one of them. But again, come up, encourage them. Again, I'll just say a huge thank you because not only have you guys been here a long time, Russ has been a part of our elder team for, again, and I can't keep track of how long that's been, but it's been a long time. You guys stuck through, like I say to everybody that's been here. It's easy now to look at it and be like, oh wow, like it's so much different today than it was 10 years ago. And I'm personally thankful that you stuck it out. Like you were great leaders who chose to say, you know what, this is a place where I can be on mission and God can use me. And you guys have made significant differences in the lives of people, my own kids, and we're just thankful for that. So if you see him, make sure that you come up and say hi. And we thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.